Good evening, JPC. As we stand, let's pray. Lord, help us learn how not to be afraid of any opposition we face for living and speaking for you. In Jesus' name we ask it. Amen. Do please sit down. Well, if you were with us last week, you'll know that we've hit a section of Matthew's Gospel that deals with the opposition we can face for following Jesus. One recent report found that Christian persecution has reached the highest level ever since modern records began about 30 years ago. And in this country, we don't experience much of that. But as I shared a few weeks ago, one of you recently said to me, my Christian faith now seems completely contrary to the atmosphere and the values at my work. And I'm sitting waiting to get in trouble just for living as a Christian. And whether we can relate to that or not, I think it's pretty much the state of play. So the danger of all of this is that we feel more afraid than we ever did before. And if you're anything like me, you might feel afraid at the best of times. So I can think of someone who I know who is hostile. Yeah, they're pretty much hostile to Christian things. And they've been a bit awkward with me before. And to my shame, I recently found myself avoiding them in the street a while back. So that's where I'm at sometimes, which is literally nothing in comparison to what some of us or Christians around the world are facing right now. Jesus forgives us. Jesus loves us. And in these great words of him, we'll see that he anticipates our fear. He knows how experiencing hostility and trouble for following him will make us feel. And speaking into that situation, Jesus gives us 4 reasons not to be afraid. They're hard reasons. But friends, they are reasons that we need to hear. So here's the first one. Don't be afraid, because all opposition to the gospel will one day be revealed. So think with me about persecution and opposition for a minute. Around the world, thousands of Christians are being mistreated, imprisoned, killed. And at the more extreme end of things in this country, I flicked through the cases section of the Christian Institute website this week. It's a tough read. And even in cases where there was a good, just outcome for the Christian, there's all the pain of the public attention, in some cases being dragged through the courts for years. Think about that inner, secret thought from someone that ensures a Christian is treated badly. Think of that backroom decision that means a Christian is snubbed for a job. Think of those of us who have been disciplined just for sharing a Christian view, just for proposing it, not imposing it, proposing it. I can think of a friend of mine who's faced relentless stick. He faced relentless stick just because he lived with friends, and he faced it just because he was a Christian. Just for being and living as a Christian, little comments, sly digs, again and again and again. Doesn't it hurt so much when people at school, people at uni, wherever it may be, are always having a go? All of this, it can make us so afraid. Yet look at what Jesus says to us. Reading from verse 26. It might be helpful to you to have the Bibles open in front of you, that are sat in front of you, page 815, 815, reading from verse 26. So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. So Jesus is saying there will be a day when he returns to this world and uncovers every single aspect of opposition, every hidden motive, every anti-Jesus thought, all that's hushed up, all that's tucked away, our Christian brothers and sisters around the world who've suffered in secret, one day we will know what they went through for following Jesus. One day all who have worked against and opposed Jesus and his people will have to give an answer to him. One day Jesus will no longer allow his name to be dishonored. He will no longer allow anyone or anything, government, law, disciplinary board, to hurt those who love and serve him. Knowing our future, knowing this future, helps us combat our fear in the here and the now. Because opposition for following Jesus, it will not last forever. One day it will end. It will end once and for all. And on that day we'll no longer carry those feelings of pain, those feelings of injustice that opposition causes. Jesus will take them. He will deal with them. He will heal them this side of eternity with him. So there may well be future opposition that we have to endure. But the end of the story has already been written. Jesus will return. He will return to rule and judge, and he's not going to miss anything. He will deal with it all with perfect justice as he sees fit. And knowing this, really getting this, can help us speak and live for Jesus now. Verse 27, what I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. So Jesus was saying to the apostles back then, look, it's nearly time for the message of me to get out to everyone, everywhere. Skip on to the end of Matthew's Gospel, after Jesus died, after he rose again, and you'll see that the time is now. And the responsibility, well, it is ours. Jesus knows what opposition means. He knows that it means that we're tempted to retreat. We're tempted to duck away and keep our heads down. But he's saying here, even if you face opposition, everyone, everywhere still needs to hear about me. Because one day Jesus will uncover everything. And before that, don't we want as many people as possible to have heard about him? After all, what did we read a few weeks ago? That the harvest is what? It's plentiful. There are people who will hear. There are people who respond. So we're to shout it from the housetops. Do all that we can to get the gospel message out to everyone, everywhere, including to those who actively oppose God. They oppose God and therefore they oppose us. We need Christians serving as missionaries in Muslim countries. We need people in this country seeking to engage the most hostile people here among us. Because if someone hadn't told you the gospel, if God hadn't brought you to trust in him, where would you be? And who's to say you or me wouldn't be out there opposing and working against God? So that's reason one, not to be afraid, because all opposition to the gospel will one day be revealed. And here's reason number two. Don't be afraid, because no opposition for following Jesus can destroy your relationship with him. Verse 28, and do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. So if Bible passages are coffees, this is not a one-shot skinny latte, is it? It's a double espresso, a ristretto, one of those super strong Turkish coffees. I don't know if you've ever had one of those before. If not, be warned. It is strong, strong stuff. Again, Jesus wants to help us with our fear of living and speaking for him. He's saying here, look, even if you get killed for following me, Nothing can destroy your soul because we're in relationship. He's saying, I've taken responsibility for getting you beyond this life to be with me forever. Jesus knows that the cost of following him can be huge. But he's saying the cost of not following him is far, far greater. Because ultimately it's eternal punishment without God in hell. And that's far more to be feared than anything else. He who can decide our eternal destiny is far more to be feared than anyone or anything else. I do not like talking about hell. Being faithful to the Bible gives me no choice this evening. We take it on Jesus' authority that hell exists and that it's awful and that it is to be avoided at all costs. Because when Jesus speaks about hell, it's always because he does not want people to go there. So if you are not yet a Christian, you're so welcome with us this evening. Jesus wants you to trust him with your sin. He wants you to get back into relationship with him. He wants you to bring you beyond this life into eternity with him forever. He wants you to avoid hell. Jesus speaks about hell in this passage not to minimize the pain of opposition for following him, but to put it into the perspective of eternity. Oh, it is far better to face opposition and remain faithful to Jesus now, to one day enjoy God's unopposed rule in heaven forever, than to reject Jesus now and one day face hell and life without him. And if we get that, it will help us when we feel afraid. Because on one hand, we'll know that any pain in following and living for Jesus now will one day be the tiniest, most microscopic thing imaginable, because there will be the forever of eternity to live and to enjoy with God. And on the other hand, we'll know that not following Jesus is unimaginably worse than any suffering we could face for following him in this life. A while back, I was reading about a lady called Shanti. Shanti lives in India. She became a Christian along with her whole family. She was in her 50s at the time. Her extended family rejected them all. There was so much persecution they had to flee to another village. Then one day they were taken and beaten up by Hindu extremists. They reported this to the police. Their reaction to us was to take them, seize them, beat them even further, and arrest them. Listen to Shanti's response to all of this. She said, I have experienced the love and peace of Christ in my life. All Christ wanted was my heart. My family and I can never leave Christ for the mere pressures of humans. When Christ himself was rejected by his own, what are we? The Bible warns us we will face persecution. So we are prepared for any situation. Worse may happen to us. Or I think of a friend of mine, let's call him Sam. Sam became a Christian in his 30s, but soon none of his friends were interested in him at all anymore, because he was not prepared to go along and to do the things that he used to do. And his reaction to that situation, all his friends leaving him behind, he said, in Jesus I've gained far more than I've lost. He said, in Jesus I've gained far more than I've lost. So I think Shanti and Sam get it, don't you? They know that what they've gained from following Jesus is so good, even in the here and now, that it's never worth giving up. They know that the cost of following Jesus is far, far less than the cost of not following him. And that is the second reason why Jesus says, do not be afraid. Because no opposition for following Jesus can destroy your relationship with him. Here's the third. Don't be afraid, because God is in control of every detail of your life. It's a good job we don't have awards for snap-based sermon subheadings around here. I'm not sure I'm going to back this sermon as an entry. Read with me from verse 29. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you have more value than many sparrows. So if God rules over the sparrows and not one of them falls outside of his care and his control, how much more does he care for and rule over our lives? If God provides for the tiny, insignificant sparrow, how much more will he provide for us? I've got a 9-month-old called Simeon. I am a terribly biased dad, I have to say, but I think he's a great, wonderful little baby. I cannot tell you how much I love that wee boy. Do you want to know how many hairs he has on his head? Don't have a clue. He's actually always had loads. How could I ever even begin to count them? It is an impossible task. Friends, God knows the number of hairs on your head. For some of us, that's not very many. That's not the point. God's love for us is extraordinary. It is intimate. It is personal. It is unquantifiable. It is literally immeasurable. He knows us. He knows us better than we know ourselves. You see, in our heads, we think if I speak for Jesus in this situation, then something bad will happen and then I'll suffer. But Jesus is saying here, yes, you might suffer for living and speaking for me, but I am with you. God, your heavenly Father, is with you. He knows you. He loves you. He cares. He's in control. He will provide. A while back, a friend of mine had great opportunities to speak for and speak about Jesus in his workplace, but in the back of his mind, he was thinking, will this affect me now? Will it affect my references for a future job in the future? I think one big reason I'm afraid of suffering for Jesus is not trusting that he'll provide for me, that he'll sustain me, that he'll help me, that he'll work for my good. But the reality here, according to Jesus, it's so very different. He says that in whatever trouble we face, God is in control and he will provide. God cares. He cares about the details of your life. Haven't we seen this in the lives of those of us who have faced opposition? A friend I just mentioned, he got the next job he needed to get when he needed to get it. Later in that article I mentioned about Shanti, she went on to describe how she had been supported materially by Christians giving through the Barnabas Fund. That's why we support the Barnabas Fund and other organisations like Open Doors to help relieve the needs of persecuted Christians around the world. Because as well as caring for us, God can use us to help relieve the needs of others who face far, far worse than we do. Jesus doesn't promise us an opposition-free life, but he does promise that he'll take care of us through any opposition that we do face, with a loving care that is beyond comprehension. And that is the absolutely staggering third reason not to be afraid. God is in control. He is in control of every detail of your life. Here's the fourth one and the final one. Don't be afraid, because what really matters is how we respond to Jesus. Verse 32. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven. So again, Jesus has the TV remote. The film is the history of our world. He's fast forwarding to the final day at the very end of time. And on that day, the single most important question for any of us is, what have we done with Jesus' offer of forgiveness and relationship? If we've accepted it and acknowledged Jesus, he will acknowledge us. And so he will say to the Father, they have accepted me. They have accepted me as king so they can enter into my kingdom. But if we've denied Jesus, if we've denied him and his rightful rule over our lives, Jesus will say to God the Father, they don't want to follow me, and they can't be in this kingdom if they won't willingly recognize me as king. Friends, there are only two ways to live. And in the end, though lots of things matter in life, this is the one thing that really matters. If you're with us this evening, you're not a Christian, you're looking into Christian things, it's so important that you do that on your own terms. But sooner or later, you need to decide what you're going to do with Jesus' offer of forgiveness. It's costly following Jesus, but it is more costly not to. The question is, can you afford not to? And for those of us who are Christians, this perspective keeps us going in sharing the gospel and living for Jesus now. Because what really matters, the acceptance of our family, our friends, our neighbours, that gives us a quiet life, or the acceptance of Jesus that gets us beyond this life. Anyone who denies Jesus, in the end, they won't be with him. And keeping that in mind will help us endure opposition. It will help put our fear into perspective. Because wouldn't we go through some pain now so as many people as possible could at least make an informed choice when it comes to Jesus? And wouldn't we rather go through some pain now to find on that final day that just as we opened up our lives in service to Jesus, that he opens up the doors of eternity for us. Really getting that is bound to help when we feel afraid. Let's pray. Father God, you know us, and you know at times that we can and do feel afraid in living and speaking for you. You know our future may bring us yet more reasons to be afraid. We ask that by the power of your mighty Spirit, you would help us to comprehend the extent to which it is worth any suffering now to one day be with you forever. Help us see that living for you is better than anything else. And help us grasp that you know every hair on our head, and that you will always remain committed to our care and our ultimate good. For Jesus' sake we pray. Amen.